Welcome to High Tech Heroes. Here's your host, Sherwin Gooch.
Hello and welcome back to High Tech Heroes. I'm speaking here with Heinz von Foerster about cybernetics, and I guess we're going to cover some questions of what is a living system, which is, I think, a very hard thing to define, but perhaps you could try, Heinz.
Sure, I will try. I think what evolved in the last 20 years is something like that, essentially under the influence of cybernetic thinking, namely the circularity of processes, the notion of self-organization. The first thought came about, has life really only to do with reproduction? The first notion was that life, reproduction, that's the essential features. Now we are sitting here, Sherwin, we are perhaps producing, but we are not reproducing, but well, I think we are alive.
Yes, well, but I think that maybe a clinical definition of life would only be a system whose goal state is to propagate.
Very good.
Like systems, right?
Yeah. No, very good. I'm just saying, always was thought life has something to do with reproduction, but that's of course not the only thing. The notion of life is that it maintains life.
Yes.
And the idea is, when was life generated? Of course, when the self-organization of molecules, things like that, you see, these guys suddenly started to reproduce other guys and maintaining that configuration without being destroyed.
Actually generating more of this configuration.
Not only generating more, but generating itself again, you see?
Yes.
Because this thing may fall to pieces, the point is that it regenerates itself. The notion of life as a regenerating, self-regenerating entity entered more and more into the discussion. The question was, how can it do that? And when one looks at the whole details of maintaining life as the function of life, you come up with a notion which is now being kicked around in molecular biology, in all the circles of biology, origin of life, people, etc., etc. This is the notion of autopoiesis. This is a term, I will translate, it comes from the Greek. Autos means self.
Yes.
And poiesis comes from the Greek word poiein, which is the same word as we have in poetry. It's to create, to produce. So autopoiesis is a system which produces itself. So it maintains life, maintaining life is one of the essential notions regarding what is life. And the question, how does it do it? And the detailed interpretation of that is as follows. If you have a system which consists of many components, and these components interact with each other in a productive way, producing some other components, when the system is organized such that the production of these components are the very components that do this production, then you have an autopoietic system, and then you have a living organization.
So I guess I would ask the question, can living organizations contain other living organizations? It appears that we have cells which are autopoietic entities unto themselves.
Yes.
And then we are a collection of these autopoietic entities being a living system. And I guess if we work for a corporation, perhaps that's a larger autopoietic entity, or a government.
Well, there are, of course, amongst the autopoieticists, if I may call these people who are representing the autopoietic philosophy, if you ask them, then they are not really uniform in their opinion. For instance, the notion of autopoiesis was applied to social systems, or as you do,
yes, to
corporations,
to governments,
etc., etc. No, the originators of the notion of autopoiesis would fight that position. Let me introduce these people to you. You see, you remember them. They are two Chileans, or three Chilean people from Santiago de Chile. They are also sometimes referred to as the Santiago School of Biology. They come from Santiago de Chile. One is Umberto Maturana, another one is Francisco Varela, and the other one is Mr. Uribe. So these three wrote the first paper, which was a real splash in biology, about autopoiesis, you see. Mm-hmm. And some people jumped on it immediately. Some people, of course, said, this is all nonsense, how can you produce that, etc., etc. But this is now long history. This was probably 73, 74, something around that time, perhaps even earlier. Now, in the meantime, the autopoietic notion has crept into the whole biological thread. The major biological representative today are using that term. And to come back to your original question, which was the Gaia hypothesis,
yes, yes.
These people who expand the notion of autopoiesis to a larger system than just you and me, see, they said Gaia is an autopoietic system because it fulfills all the conditions. It fulfills the condition that all the components of that Gaia system are productively interacting with each other, and what do they produce? The very components with which they start out. So the Gaia is a perpetually reconstructing, regenerating system which maintains the system as it is at the moment, the Gaia system. How can it do that? Because the sun is pumping in enough energy that the circularity of the processes which maintain the living organization of the Gaia is maintained. Otherwise it collapses and the whole thing goes.
Now I would like to ask you a little bit less abstract question.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the biologist Maturana,
Yeah.
Uribe. In particular, I would like to know about work on neural networks,
Yeah.
biological neural networks, and life extension. It's my contention that immortality is probably just around the corner, and not necessarily through biology, but possibly through being able to read out the data in someone's...
Now, in what sense do you refer to immortality? Would you
Immortality.
say Aristotle is immortal because we still read
to an
Aristotle?
extent. But if I could read out, say, all the information in my brain, and then put that on a tape.
But at the moment we have just watched about all the information. We do not use the information as a commodity. So you can't read out the information of your brain. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is, for all intents and purposes,
Yeah.
to be able to interact with a data structure that would...
Which data structure?
A copy of the data structure of that I would use in my brain.
Yeah, but how would you like to make a copy of your data structure brain? It's you, the only guy who knows it.
Well, that's true, but
Yeah.
I don't believe that's always has to be the case. And I think the fundamental question
Yeah.
about this is, where is the information stored? Is it stored actually in the axons and dendrites, the connections of the neurons, or is there actually some storage in molecular information?
Okay.
See, because it may be the case, the whole question is, if you can completely get the form out without disturbing its neighbors, right, to an extent where it doesn't matter anyway, then you can read it out. But if you're going to stick needles or probes in, or however you get the information out, and that destroys neighboring information, then maybe you can never get it out.
Let me ask something else. If you take an automobile, it drives very nicely along and does all these wonderful things. Where is the information stored in the automobile which makes it remember how to go ahead when you turn
To be an automobile.
Yeah, where is this information stored in this automobile?
In the form of the automobile. And also in the plans that they built the automobile from in the automobile factory. Right? I mean, Henry Ford knew how the automobile worked.
Yeah.
But he made more than one automobile.
Yeah.
He made a lot of them the same. And I see no reason I could not make a lot of my own copies of my own brain.
Yeah.
And then if I get hit by a car, I just go to a backup.
Very nice. But you transpose the problem from the automobile to Mr. Ford's brain. You see, the question which I have, which we have, I thought, cleared in your first statement is information a commodity? Is information to be handed up in this way and that way? And then I think we came to the conclusion that where is your memory, or where is my memory? I am my memory. You see, I can't store it. It's the whole thing. You see how I can move or cannot move.
I have read Memory Without Record, Heinz, and I know what you're saying. However, I still believe that it's possible, for example, in that model, it's all stored in connections of axons and dendrites, actually. Or you would say, now your problem is with my use of the word stored. I would have to say the structure.
It's your problem.
The structure acts in a certain way.
Oh, that's not bad.
Okay?
That's quite good.
And I would like to make another structure which acts in a similar, in fact, as much as possible the same way.
Yeah, but wouldn't then you need to know how the structure is which you would like to simulate?
Yes, and this is my question for you. That structure has information certainly in the connections.
That's what you say.
Well, I think this, I mean, I really believe that the research is solid enough to know that this is true. But it may also be that a particular neuron knows whether to fire or not, depending on some molecular state inside the cell. And this may mutate, may change depending on. And my question for you is, which is the case? Is that the case, or is it just not known?
All these things are constantly going on when we speak, when we talk, when I take this thing, and I look at my watch. All these things, the whole Sherman-Gooch, the whole Heinz von Foerster is constantly involved in all these activities. So if you pick a couple of neurons here, a couple of molecules there, they will tell you practically nothing. The only thing what's going on is if we are sitting together exactly as here, and you, Sherman-Gooch, say, where are in the molecules this and that stored? And here comes Heinz von Foerster and says, Sherman, don't look at storage in molecules. Look at how the whole system interacts with you, and I'm interacting with you, and you are interacting with me. Look at this wonderful poster, do you? Can we look at the moment of that Cybernetics poster? Can we move over with the camera to see that big poster, Cybernetics poster?
Anyway.
If you can't see it at the moment, okay. Maybe yeah, here we are. Can we see more of that poster? The whole poster, maybe. Then you see the two animals biting each other's tails. They are Greek names. They are called uroboroi, and they come from the alchemy. These are chemical substances which regenerate each other. And if we could read what says underneath.
Well, underneath it says communication is the interactive computation of a reality. The interactive computation of a reality. What we are doing here is doing in our interactions, a linguistic, semantic interaction, generate a reality which we hope your viewers will enjoy. Yes, but I still think the question is, if you duplicate Heinz von Foerster,
can't.
Molecule by molecule, that is impossible. However, it is impossible with technology advancing to come to closer and closer copies. Now, a perfect copy is impossible, we know, because of the uncertainty principle.
No, don't come with the uncertainty. Even the roughest copy is impossible because you don't even know what that system is. You can't. It's a nonsensical question.
I know it's an organization of molecules, of atoms, if you will.
Yeah.
Of particles.
Yeah. And
if I could duplicate that to a close enough approximation, then I would be able to have a transporter of Star Trek fame or a backup copy.
Yeah. No, I would rather prefer that you are playing Heinz von Foerster in another show. That would be a much better effort, I believe, than to try to duplicate molecule by molecule Heinz von Foerster.
Yeah. Well, I see we're out of time, Heinz, and I really appreciate your taking the trouble to come here and be on the program, and it's been very enjoyable.
Sherwin, it was a pleasure seeing you again after 15 years.
Yes, it's great to see you again, Heinz.
And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week for High Tech Heroes. Be sure to tune in next week where we'll bring you more entertaining information about the people and ideas behind the scenes in high-tech industry. And now this is your announcer, Anthony Brzis, wishing you the best of luck and a pleasant tomorrow. Au revoir. This episode of High Tech Heroes has been made possible in part by grants from Kinetic Microscience of San Jose, California, Cybernetic Arts of Sunnyvale, California, and Big D Closeouts of Sunnyvale, California.